Our agenda for today is to talk about some changes to the annual process with the new process builder and what that does to your every year process. We're also going to look at building a new process, so all the parts of the process builder. If you have used our process builder and form builder in the past, this is going to be very exciting for you because the changes are much more user friendly. We're going to look at the form builder. We'll talk about pre-built forms. We may not be doing this in this exact order. We're going to talk about pre-built forms that are already out there for you. We're going to talk about the new form builder and how you can create one or edit one. And then we're going to talk about some new and upcoming question types. All right, I'm going to jump into the process manager. So it has a new access point and a new look. So when you go in, if you are the appraisal administrator in your district, if you have that role, then you will have a new button in your settings page that says process management. It may not be in this bottom left-hand corner. I think things have been moved around a little bit, and it is up in the top right-hand corner. At least it is on mine when I log in. But you will have one that says process management, and then you've had the form management button for over a year, but what you see when you get inside that button is completely different now. So once you go into that process manager, you'll see the processes, and we'll open them up and look at them. I'm actually going to go into the application for this, so I'm going to switch over and go into Strive, and I'm going to go to the far left and down to settings, and then I'm going to click on process management. If you don't have process management, form management, and framework set up, you don't have the appraisal administrator role in the management system, your roles and rights. So if you need to see this, if this is part of your job and you can't see these things, you need to talk to the system administrator in your district and tell them that you need the appraisal administrator role. Okay, I'm going to go into process management, and it's going to show me a list of all of my processes. So this is a different view from what we've had in the past, and there's also some new functionality. So you'll notice on my campus staff evaluations, I don't have dates set here, and so this is red. This process is currently inactive because it doesn't have dates. And so if someone went in and tried to assign a user to be evaluated with this process, it would be grayed out because it's inactive, because no dates are set. This is going to be a new part of your annual process that every year when things get archived, they're going to get put back to not set. When this year's dates, when this window is closed out and archived, then it will go back to not set, waiting for you to come in and update it for the coming year. So hopefully that will also be the prompt to go in and review before you set the due dates. But that's one of the things that's going to be a change. And you'll notice that I have processes in 3 different states. I have some that are active, which means we are already past the start date, on or past the start date. That will turn it active. That will mean everything's ready to go. I have one down at the bottom that's in standby mode, which means we have not gotten to the start date of this process. However, if I went in and tried to assign somebody to this process, I would be able to do that because it has dates. Even though that date hasn't come and it's not active as a process, the system still knows this is going to be a process this year, so I can go ahead and assign it to my users. So you may already be done with all of your evaluators choosing their people for this year. If not, they should be able to go in and do that. But next year, you could set your dates early enough that the principals can go in and do it while they're still on standby. And then as soon as it flips over to active, it's ready for the user. So those are the 3 different ways you're going to see it when you come in. Before I set my dates, I want to come over here and review my process. So I want to open it up and I want to make sure that my steps and tasks are what I want them to be. In this case, it's a 1-step process, but it has multiple templates. So I would also want to review my templates and make sure those are still the right ones, or maybe we added 2 more templates that need to go in here. And I also want to look at my due dates for each individual item. So in this particular process, I can set my dates up here. I'm going to click on this pencil. I'm going to choose my start date, and I can use the calendar if I want to and say, well, I'm just going to start it today. It's effective as of right now. And then I can go over and click on the calendar for the end date. I'm going to switch over to 2027 so I don't have to click 12 times. And then I'm just going to back it up and say this process should be wrapped up by June 11th. Our target has always been, our recommendation has always been to try to do your archive in the middle of June. Wrap up all your processes in the first couple weeks of June, archive in the middle of June, and then have those last couple weeks and maybe the first week of July to get everything revised, new templates created, process changes made, so that you can then go in and open those processes up for next year and have them ready to go. So think about that as you're planning your process this year. What could be my target end date for all my processes so that I'm ready to archive and give myself a little window of planning time in the middle of the year? I can
Hey,
also,
Paige.
yes,
Sorry, can I say something real quick? There was a question that was asked, and I think we could talk about it here.
sure.
Is that if the dates change, like if you change your start and end date, and what the implications would be. So just basically, you can edit and change the start and end dates. This is your time frame for when it's active, meaning you could create documents or not. If you create a document, like if you change it, you move it back, but you already have documents created, I would just keep that into consideration, because that means like when you archive, these are going to be your dates for archiving too eventually. So you just want to make sure. The implication would be if you change it or move it back and there are dates or there are documents created outside of that time frame, it might be best just to like leave it. This is just basically your window so that you can make it, people can create them, but also it'll be your window for archiving eventually.
And it does not need to align with your instructional calendar. So I would probably never back this one, like move it to a later time. I would only maybe move it to an earlier time. So if I find out, hey, I have a couple documents that were done before this, I would, want to make it earlier. It would be hard for them to have a document if you didn't have any dates set at all. But let's say I had set it for this date and then I found out I needed to change it. I would probably leave it earlier rather than later, because you want to, like Shanna said, you want to make sure you catch everything in that window. And then the same is true for the end date. If we get to June 9th and somebody says there's no way I'm going to be finished by the 11th, you can go in and extend that date out to give them a few extra days to finish the process. So yes, they can be edited, but you still want to make sure that the start date is before any documents could have been created and the end date is after any documents could have been created, because that's going to be your archive window. Good question. I did want to point out one other thing. I'm going to go back to the process management page, and on this other process, I opened the process and did my review before I set the dates. But if I know what my dates are, I could come in here and I can set it right here by choosing, I'm going to choose last Monday was my start date. And then I'm going to come over here and choose my end date. And okay, I hope I'm not a liar when I say this, but I'm pretty sure you have to hit the enter key after that one in order to make it save. So you can click on this one and put your date, click on this one and put your date, but then you need to hit the return key or the enter key in order for it to save that second date. So I can do them here in the inline dates, or I can open up the process that I want to look at and go in and change the dates there. Again, when I'm evaluating a process, so let me just pretend like I'm going to go in and look at this one. This is a single step process too. Let me pick a better option. I'll pick my principal process. When I'm reviewing my process, I do want to make sure that all of my templates are still the correct templates, that all my steps and tasks are there. And then, oops, I need to have due dates that are within this time frame. So I need to update my dates on each one of my tasks as well. So I'm going to move this over and make it the 14th of 26 instead of 25, or the 15th it should be, because that's a Monday. I don't want to make them come in on Sunday. Oh, I just didn't change my year. That's why. Um, so I want to make sure that I'm changing all of my dates on all of my items, because this is what's going to make them show up in the overview, so that it helps your appraisers to see What do I have coming due? What do I have overdue, if anything? What do I have that's incomplete? It has to have those dates on there. So middle of the year, that probably needs to change to the 27th, 2027 as well. Um, for both of these things. So I would just want to go through and make sure that I'm setting my dates to be the correct year, the correct date that I want. If your district has an appraisal calendar, that's where I would start. And I would put in all my dates based on what the appraisal calendar said. When all of my due dates are set on my process steps, I've checked that all of my templates are the correct ones and that my required numbers are correct, and I've set my start date and end date, then I'm ready to go with this process. Okay, so I'm going to go back to I'm going to close this process, and it does auto save. You'll notice beside the close button, it says saved right now. But as I click on things, and if I make a change, let me make a change to a date down here. I'll change this one over. It's going to flash really quickly between saving and saved. I don't know if you
Hey,
saw it.
Paige,
It's fast. Yes, ma'am.
it's fast. Will you do me a favor and click over on the right where under close where it says collapse all real quick and look at that,
Yes.
just show them that view.
And I do
Um,
like this view. I want to show it where that you can see I can see all the
yeah,
steps and tasks and all the due dates without seeing all the templates and all the other settings.
I love it.
So that to me is the quick view just to go in and review. At some point, I do want to review my templates. I want to expand and say, yep, that's the right template. Yes, that's the right goal type. Yes, that's the right goal type. So I want to make sure that that's all set correctly. But if I'm just reviewing dates, then I can see the steps and the dates, and it's a lot cleaner, and I can just leave it in that view if I want to. I also want to note that up here in the upper left-hand corner is where you will set your score settings. If you are a TIA district and you want to set up for the TIA report, this is where you will put that information in. It used to be a separate tab in the other view. Now it just says performance score settings, but that's where it is. Okay, I'm going to close the manager right now, and I'm going to click on build a new process. And we're just going to go through really quickly how to set a new process up. It'll be a short one, but I'm going to say build a new process. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it webinar process. And then you can say what type it is. Right now, evaluation is the only type, but that is something that is coming in the future. If there is a framework to assign to it, then you would select that framework here. I am going to assign a framework just because I want to show you something in the process. But you don't need a framework if they don't have elements that are tagged together over time. Like T-test, they've got goals, professional development, walkthroughs, observations, summatives, reflection documents, maybe even some uploaded evidence, and all of that needs to be tied together, and it requires a framework to do that. If you only have the what I call the once and done single evaluation per year, they don't necessarily need a framework to function. So you can leave it at no framework. That is an option. I can set my due dates here if I know them. In fact, it wants me to set a due date. So I'm going to go ahead and set one. But I can go in and edit these later if yeah, I will probably decide I want to change something about these. But it does want me to set the due date before I start building. Um, so the first thing it does for you is give you your first step and task. So it already builds one for you just by creating the process. The step is where you can click and type what you want it to be called. So I'm going to call this beginning of the year conference. That would be the name. So if I come over to my staff and I look at a person who has a process assigned, these headings, goal setting, walkthroughs, observations, those are my step titles in the new process builder. And then the things that are underneath there are my task titles and task types. So if I go back over to my process builder and find my webinar process, I've got one step already named, and then my first task is going to be a self-assessment. It's going to be a form. I can set my due date now. So I can say it's going to be due next month, maybe on the 11th. I'm going to require that they do one of those. So I can set my required number. The required number is a required minimum. It does not prevent them from doing additionals if need be. And then once I've said I want it to be a form, I'm going to click search for the folder. What kind of form is it? It's going to be a reflection form because I said it was a self-assessment. So I'm going to go in and find the principal beginning of the year self-assessment form and close my little window. So now I have the form or template attached. I've told it it's a form type. I've given it a title. I've given it a due date and a requirement. So that task is good to go. If I have another task, I can just click here. This one's going to be a goal. I'm going to call it professional goal. And I'm going to again put a due date on there of next month on the 11th, and they're required to do one of those as well. If this is a process for teachers and I have a student growth goal, I'm going to click goals and then I'm going to select student growth goal. If this is a teacher, because the student growth goal type here is tied to standards, TEKS, course specific, actually probably more like focus area specific TEKS that you would put in. Most principal goals are not that specific. They might be math scores or behavior or sixth grade test results, but they're not going to be down to the course level or the focus area level. So those still need to be set as a professional growth goal type so that they're tied to the TPES process, but we label them as the one that's a professional goal and one that's a student goal. So these words don't have to match. This is just the title I'm giving it. This is the way I want it to function. And for principals, they don't need and won't tie it to the TEKS. So we need to allow them to tie it to their standards. If that's all I have in step one, then I can come down and say I want to add a step and give it a title. And maybe I'm going to have a middle of the year conference. So again, I can add as many tasks as I want to in my process. They can be forms, which I select from the list of forms that I have, or they can be goals. And we have two types, professional goal and student growth goal. The student growth goal task type is only for teachers. So for each of my steps and tasks, I want to make sure I'm setting due dates and requirements. Some things might not be required. If it's an optional item, you can leave the required number to 0. Sometimes in the t-test process, there will be a t-test required walkthrough task, and then there'll be an additional walkthrough task that is not required, but it might be for some instructional feedback or for something that instructional coaches are going to do. And so they're not a required number. Not everyone will have those. Okay, so that is basically the building of a process. Like Shanna said, I can collapse them all to review quickly, or I can expand either one step at a time so that I'm only looking at the beginning of the year step, or I can expand all of them so that I'm looking at everything expanded out. And then I can edit my title or any of this information. I have to click on that pencil in order to be able to edit it. So I always end up clicking over here trying to edit when I forget that I have to click the pencil, open the little box, and then save it. Okay, as you're building, especially if you're making changes, and everybody's going to be making changes next year when we move over to the new t-test process that's being piloted this year. When you're doing testing, you probably want to build a sample process with a sample form and a sample teacher so that you can go in and look at those things without employing or deploying, I guess, your actual process. I want to keep this inactive until I'm ready for people to see it and use it so I could build a sample one and test out my forms in there and then delete that when I'm done with the testing and use this as my process. So that's just a little recommendation so that you don't run into an issue where you can't edit a form because you did a test in it and there's something out there in existence. If you keep it separate and make a little testing environment for yourself, that will make it a little bit easier. All right, I'm going to run through and stop here and turn it over to Shanna to talk about what's in the works.
All right. So, and a couple of things came up, questions. You guys are asking really good questions. Again, this is a whole new animal here. We have a lot of different things. The one question, I guess, that was asked, I wanted to answer live is, can you change the process? Like, how do you make changes if it's already attached to an appraisee or a person? So that is currently a bug in our system. You should be able to edit. Now, they did have it locked down where, and we just had to kind of work through that. If you changed a goal, like if you had a goal, a task in your step that was a goal, and then you changed it to a form, or vice versa. Let's say you had a form, you change it to a goal. We don't want to lose that information. So that was kind of a way to keep the integrity of it, but also it kept you guys from being able to do what you needed to do. So we don't want to lose that form. So basically, if you do change that, and again, this is something that they're fixing this right now. Then when you change it, it'll give you a warning and it'll say any forms or anything that's attached to this, it'll be moved to that other documents area. So just to allow you to be able to do that. And also adding steps and tasks. That is also a bug that they're working on right now. So hopefully if you're trying to change or edit your process, you'll be able to do that sometime tomorrow or by Friday. So just hang tight for that. And I do apologize. Okay. So the other thing to talk about, sorry, I was finishing up that one thought, and then I was like, oh wait, I have more. Um, so some other things, we've gotten some really good suggestions, feature requests. You guys are thinking because this is definitely a game changer, and it can help us work through the process. Um, but some things that we have on our radar, again, being able to, I talked about archiving. So when we archive in the future, it will be that start and end date, and you will be able to archive. It'll be another status. So where it says active after you're done with it, it'll say awaiting archive. So it'll give you a little idea that you need to archive it. Again, like Paige said, if you need to extend because you're not done, you can extend that end date. It's not going to archive for you. However, that has been a request. So I'm not saying that, maybe someday. Um, some other requests or things, hiding or making the processes inactive, copying a process. And then also, the other thing that we're super excited about at some point is to have, and I think, Michael, you asked a question about coaching, being able to have a coaching process or a separate process from the formal evaluation. So that's, again, these are some things that are on the radar. I like, Michael, you also suggested having start and end date on tasks. So we're definitely open to things like that. Having a step become collapse or become dormant after you get past it. So a lot of things that we can do. I don't have an exact timeline for that, but definitely a lot that we have on the radar for our future.
And I would like to encourage you to submit those fabulous ideas. Like I really liked the start and end date on tasks. Submit those as feature requests. So you can send them to support@eduphoria.net. Put feature request in the subject line and just tell us what you're looking for. That way it doesn't fall off the radar. Those do get processed up and go to the product team, and they take a look at those when they're going in to do some new development. But anytime you have an idea or something that you would like to see, something that would be helpful in your process, please submit that as a feature request.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say a lot of these things that you are seeing that we've updated in processes and in the forms that you're going to see next came from feature requests. It all came from you.
Absolutely. Okay, so now we're going to move on to form management, which is the second half of our webinar today. I'm going to go in and show you my first slide, and then I'm jumping live again. So we're first going to talk about these flagged items that you may be seeing in your process. So I'm going to click over and go to my form management, and I'm going to turn on this button up here that says flagged for review. You can see why I had it turned off. So it is telling me that I have a lot of things that are flagged. You may not have any. The only reason it flagged is if it saw something that might be a strange formatting. And those of you who've built templates in the past know that sometimes we said put a space to leave that blank just so that you have a placeholder there and add you have to add in a group even though you don't need a title in that group. So leave that blank. So we had you do some things to make them look pretty and work around the limitations of that builder. Well, this builder has all that built in, so it tried to make sections every time there was a blank, and so there may be some things in there that are unusual. So I'm going to go in and look at one of those. I'm going to go to this librarian template, and anytime you have one that's flagged, it's going to give you this same warning box. So it doesn't change what it's not telling you specific things to look for. It's just giving you some recommendations. Look at scoring if you have it turned on. Look at your items, your questions, your text. Look at your layout. And then if you think everything's right, you can check this box and that will make the warning go away. But things that you might see in terms of formatting is these are three text boxes and they may not need to be three. If I preview it, I've got box, box, box. I don't know if I need that information box at all. Maybe I just need these two boxes, or maybe I can combine those into one. So I could come up here and say, I'm going to take this box off altogether. So I'm just going to hit the delete button. Gone. And then this one, I'm going to copy it. Actually, I'm going to cut it and I'm going to paste it up here. And then I can set that a couple of different ways. Now that it's in here, I could highlight it and say, I want that to be bulleted text. And so it will set it up as a bulleted box. Or I could say that I wanted to make part of it a title or a subtitle. So you can format what you put in that text box now. And I can also just make parts of it bold or underline if there was a specific word that I wanted to focus on, or maybe I just wanted to have like this bold. I could come up and format that. So I can kind of combine those so that my text boxes look a little better, not wasting quite so much space. And then again, this one that I cut out of, so it's blank now, I can delete. You can't delete until it's empty. So if I didn't cut it when I copied it the first time, I would have to go back in and remove that separately. This one is really needs one ratings box, but it made five for me because it has each rating in a separate box. And so that really doesn't need to be spread out that much. So I'm going to close that up. And again, I'm just going to cut and come up here and paste. And then I'm going to cut this one, paste it in, and the same for these two. And again, once I'm done cutting and pasting, that was not a cut. Once I'm done cutting and pasting, I can go in and make that a bulleted list if I want to, or make things bold, whatever it is that I need to do. So I've got my ratings up here. This was maybe only 4. Oh, they did have a 0. Okay. So whatever information you want to have, then I can go in and clean up some of these empty boxes and just make my form look a little bit better. It does always ask me to confirm before I delete anything because it doesn't want you to accidentally throw away something that you're going to need later. The good news is if I needed a text box, it's super easy to add a new one in. So I'm going to preview this and see. I think that looks a little bit better than it did when I first looked at it. So that's maybe something that I want to clean up. Maybe I have decided that I want some questions in a section. So we had a section up here. My first one was in the information section, and it was already built for me just because the way the original template was, but there's not a section after that. So I can come over to the right-hand side and say, I want to grab a section. I'm going to drag it in, and you'll notice there's a little yellow line. Wherever the yellow line is, when I let go, that's where it's going to put the section. So it's going to put it after the section before it and before that matrix question. So there's my section. So now I might say this matrix question actually belongs in that section. So I'm going to drag it up and I can collapse that question if I want to. I want this comments question to be in that same box because it's comments that go with that matrix. So I'm going to grab this text box and bring it up. And then maybe I don't need this section at all, so I can delete it. Or maybe I'm going to make this my second section for domain 2. So I could edit it And so I have a section up here for domain one. And then, you know, I'm just really not doing good with my typing today. So I have a section for domain one with a matrix question and a text box. Then I have a section for domain two, and I can drag this matrix question and the text box below it into that section. So this one can go up here as well. So sometimes the things that you're changing are just moving things around. And then when I come up and preview it, I've got all my information. You'll see the sections are just these light shadow gray boxes. So one section is information. My second section is for domain one. My next section is for domain two, etc. So I can just drag those items over to build my form. Okay, I do want to talk, and I'm going to close this one and start with just a brand new form. So, well, I should say one other thing. Now that I have previewed this form and I've corrected all the things, I would want to come in here and check that box and say, I have reviewed it. It's not changing anything. It's just going to take away that flag because it's been reviewed now and the system knows it. So once that one's off my flag list, and I can not show my flagged ones. If you have 111, you probably don't want to show them all at one time, but you won't have that many. So I want to build a new form from scratch. I'm going to click over here and say build a new form. I'm going to give it a title. I'm going to decide what form type it is. So I'm going to make it I'm going to make it an observation form, and I'm going to make it a t-test observation form. So I'm going to leave the start time. I'm going to change the default. This is something that always before it defaulted to an hour in the system. Now you can choose for this type of document, what do you want the default minimum to be? They can always edit it, but you can set it to be a default. And then you can also determine if you want them to have a place for additional comments. And then once I've created that, it's going to take me straight to advanced options, which was a separate tab, and a lot of people forgot it was there. They couldn't find what they were looking for. So it actually pops up as part of the creation process. If I want to turn on electronic signatures for this document, I would come in here to enable it. If I wanted to turn on scoring, I would turn that on here too. Remember that scoring is not about the ratings or about the data that you get from detailed analysis at all. It's only about what's going to be printed on the document for the teachers to see. So if you want to turn on scoring for the teachers to see an average, this is where you would go and do it. Okay, and then I'm going to start building my form. And again, I have a blank slate. So I can start by saying, well, I know I need a section. And I'm going to give this section a title, and maybe it's going to be domain two. Because this, well, I started it as an observation document, but we're going to look at that in a minute. So maybe I need to have a text box. This text box is what we had in the other one. I didn't create it or drag it over, but these three informational items at the top, they're called informational. They're sort of organizational as well. So the sections let me organize all my stuff in there. And then the text box lets me just give information. It does not require any response from the users. So this would be where I would put directions for how to do this document or whatever it is that I want them to know. So it could be descriptors of ratings. It could be whatever I want it to be. So I can drag that in, and then I can say, if I wanted to use this goal question, this is the question that is in the goal reflections documents. It's also in the principal's middle of the year documents where I can select my goal from a list and it will put my goal statement in the document, and then I can answer questions about it. Or my principal can pull my goal statement into my evaluation and then answer questions about it. So it's going to populate from our goal section into here the goal that you choose. There'll be a drop down menu. So if you want that to happen in a document, that's what you would use as this goal informational item. This is not where they write their goals. This is where they import their goals into a document. So after this, I might have a matrix question. I might have a text response question. I'm going to drag a text response in. Again, I have to look for that yellow line and make sure I want it to be inside that section. So I've got to wiggle around until my mouse gets it, and I'm using my fingers, by the way, until my touchpad gets it inside my section box, and then I'm going to let go of it. I can put a prompt on here. So I'm going to say this is going to be evidence. And then I'm going to decide if I want it to be short, which is 250 characters, which is pretty short. That's a short answer. Or if I want to give them a long response, it's up to 5,000, which is probably way more than they need, but sometimes they need a lot. So they have up to 5,000 characters in that evidence box. And then I'm going to tag it because I want everything to be tagged to the dimension, even evidence, so that it all shows up on the summative panel. So I might actually come over here and say this is 2.1 evidence. So that's what it's tagged to, and that's super clear. And then I might want to put in a ratings question of some sort. And there are a couple of different kinds. We've looked at a matrix question before, and I think y'all are familiar with it, but I am going to drop one in and just talk about some things that are different. Um, you don't have to open up separate places to put your columns and rows in here. So my first column would go here, and that would be probably distinguished. And then I could add a column for accomplished, proficient, all of those others. Um, I can say I want to have a text box now, and this is new, to have a text box under that rating for evidence so that you can drag and drop the evidence right beside the rating. My first row would be dimension 2.1, probably with the language that goes with it, which I can't say off the top of my head. So and then I would want to tag it to 2.1. So those are all things that I'm going to do in the question. I don't have scoring turned on, so I can't edit these items over here, but I could come over here and say, I need to turn on scoring so that I can edit those. I'm just going to save that. And now I could edit this and make this a 5. The default now is going from 1 to 5 instead of 5 to 1 because starting next year, that's how T-test is going to be. They've reordered and start with improvement needed. So our system is already doing that. If you want to change it to 5, then you can do that. You can set the value under the scoring, and then you can turn the scoring back off. So if I don't want them to actually score, but I want to set my own values, I can do that. I know it says that it's 1 here because it's just showing the default, but when I go in and turn the scoring back on, it will have my 5 in there. Oh, yeah, that just made a liar out of me. So I'm gonna have to check on that because that should allow you to set the defaults and then
Yeah.
turn scoring back off.
Yeah.
Okay,
We
so
also we also plan to have like an a sort ascending descending option there, but coming soon.
and that will take care of that issue. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good coming soon. Okay, I can have a prompt here, so this might be where I talk about it a little bit, but basically what I put in my columns, those are going to be the things across the top, and then what I put in my rows is going to be the language down the left-hand side. One other new thing that's here is the ability to have a no response column. I would not recommend this necessarily on observations because you want them to rate all of those, but on a walkthrough, they may not be in the room long enough to see everything. So I might want to have distinguished, accomplished, proficient, and then the sixth one be no response so that they are saying deliberately, I did not rate this because I didn't see enough information to give it a rating. So that's a new option there. And then this is that text box. Once I have given a rating, I can put my evidence right here. So if I did scripted comments while I was in the classroom, I can drag that evidence right here below that individual item. Okay, I want to talk about a couple of other question types. One is a selected response, and I'm going to show you one that's already existing, but I am going to drag in the drop-down type and show you that one. So I'm going to grab a drop-down question and pull it in. And so my option 1 is going to be distinguished. And I'm going to add another option. And all of these are going to be tagged however you want them to be tagged. They would all be tagged to whatever dimension this is. So I'm going to guess this is 2.2. So I would tag them all to 2.2. And then I can continue to add those drop downs, and I could have the text of the dimension as my prompt. And then when I preview it, that question looks like this. It tells me what the text is, and then I have my drop down to choose. So for this dimension, this distinguish is bad. Accomplished, I'll put accomplished because it's spelled correctly. So if this was the actual dimension language, then I would see what the rating was when I chose that drop down. So that's a new question, brand new. You can put more than just individual words. So that was one of the issues with the matrix questions. If they wanted to have what distinguish means, if they wanted to have all that language here, it kind of made a really tall, skinny column that was hard to read. But here I could write that language out and have it appear as part of the drop down. So I'm going to close that up and go in and show another form that has the selected response questions. So I wonder if I pulled them in here. Yes. So this is a walkthrough document that uses the selected response. And when you build a selected response, you have matrix question. Okay, this is not the one I wanted. Sorry, I picked the wrong one.
I know. I think you clicked on Matrix. You're
Yeah,
moving fast. It's
I'm
okay.
sorry. I'm watching the clock and running out of time.
I know.
This
I
is the one
know.
I wanted, the SR. So when I go in, and that's the message that you get if you have documents in there. So it's not going to let me make changes to this document because some exist. That's what Shannon was talking about earlier. But this is what a selected response question looks like. You build it kind of like a matrix. I have option one, and then option two. So my level one to improvement needed, level two developing. You'll notice these are in the opposite order because these are for the pilot. So they are for the new t-tests. But I can put the exact language of that level in the question. So I have room for all of that language to be there. And then I can also say I want to include text input afterwards for that evidence to be included with that question. So when I preview it, it looks like this. I have what the section is, what's the dimension, and then I have the different levels, and it gives me what does it mean to be improvement needed, what does it mean to be accomplished, and it tells me to be accomplished, they have to do all of this and all of this. So I think it's actually going to make it easier to rate. But once I select the level that I think is appropriate, it pops up that evidence box, and I can drag my evidence from the scripted comments right in there to support the rating that was given. So that's what a selected response question looks like. And those are the two new ones, the drop downs and the selected response. The new thing with matrix questions is that it does allow that evidence below the rating for each matrix item. Okay, a couple other things about the templates. Let's say we've built one from scratch. Halfway. We looked at editing one. What if I need to convert a form? So one of the questions that we have gotten from several districts is what about a beginning of the year conference or a middle of the year conference? So I'm going to go into my forms and I'm going to go to the reflection and I'm going to go into my beginning of the year document that we recommend, which is this self-assessment, and I'm going to make a copy of it. So I'm just going to click right here and copy it, and I'm going to say create that copy. And then it highlights it for me so I can quickly open it. And I might want to take this document because this document does all of the pre-conference things. It just does them asynchronously. So they're going to go in and select their data sources, which is one of the things that's part of the conference to think about your data that you have available. They're going to identify areas of strength and weakness. This is a great place for them to put their area of reinforcement or refinement, and then identify some of those other things that they could be working on. And then they're going to answer some questions. These questions have been around since PDOS days, asking them about their data, about their professional goal needs, I'm sorry, professional development needs. So sort of planning for that goal. And then hopefully at the end of that, they will have identified what area they want to work on. I want to work on differentiation, which usually includes those two. So that's going to be the area for my goal. And then that's the end of the document. If you wanted to, you could have at the bottom of the document and go to, well, okay, so here's another thing I can do. I can collapse all up here with my forms as well. We did that in the process, but I can do it in my forms too, and that makes the scrolling a lot less painful. So I can say I'm going to have another section. Actually, maybe I'll just put it in here. I'm going to drag in a text response, and I'm going to say it's a long response, and I'm going to call it evaluator comments, because this is a document that's created by the teacher. The teacher fills it out, but I can say I want evaluator comments and assign them to the second party. All of these documents have two parties, the evaluator and the person being evaluated. In this case, the person being evaluated started the document, so the second party would be the evaluator. So I can assign these comments to that second party. And so after the teacher fills it out and submits it, the principal can come in and add comments. The only type of question you can assign to a second party right now is a comments box, but I could have multiple comments boxes with different prompts if I needed to. And then I could also come down here and edit this that says after completing return and click. It doesn't say to do anything else, but I might want to say, um, actually, it would be in this one, in their step about submitting. It says if an electronic signature is required, you'll click sign the document. So I would add that statement in, and then I would come up to the top and turn on signatures so that this document now has participation from the appraiser and signatures from both. So if you need that as part of your beginning of the year conference, you probably have this and can do it asynchronously, or the teacher could fill it out before they show up at the conference, and then they could do this last part during the conference. So that might be an answer to that issue. The other question that I have gotten quite a bit is, what about a middle of the year conference? So we don't have a middle of the year conference created for T-tests, but I could go into the evaluation section and I could find that middle of the year T-test document. And I'm going to make a copy of it. So I'm going to copy that document and I'm just going to call it T-tests. Middle of the year progress. And this is one of the things that is new. I could leave it as an evaluation document, or if I didn't want to mix evaluations with my other types, I could make it a walkthrough, or I could make it an observation. Whatever you want, I could create a copy that is that format. And so now I can open it up. I would want to change, I'm going to take out this whole section here because that's all about principal stuff and the TPES manual, and that doesn't need to be part of it. So I could delete that section altogether. This would stay the same. They're going to drop down. This is where they would create that goal question where I'm going to use the drop down list to pick the goal and then have some questions. I'm going to rate it as being progressing or not progressing. I probably, since I made a copy, need to pull these out. So they only have two choices. And then I do the same thing for oh, here's a place where we could talk about evidence and a revised plan if needed, but this one can go. That doesn't need to be there anymore. So I've got appraiser comments. I've got a revised plan. I may not need the appraiser comments if the appraiser is starting it. So I might want to make this a staff comments so that they could comment on the document. They can always comment in the messages too. I'd do the same thing for the student growth goal. And then I could also turn that on for signatures if I wanted it to be a signable document. So you can convert. I also want to come up to the top, and I didn't do this. This one didn't have a framework set because it was in the T-test process, but I could set it to be my T-test process if I need it to be part of that. So you can convert documents from one type to another. You can convert them from one process to another. You can make a copy and change anything that you want. So if you have something that's for another process, you can always copy it and edit it. Okay, let me see if I covered all the things that I wanted to cover. Talked about all of that. I did not mention pre-built forms. I think I showed one, but I don't think I went in and talked about it. When you're in the form management, you will have a section up here called Prebuilt Forms. This is, at least for now, replacing the community. So we are able to put documents out there. If it's something that you want to use, you can preview it from here. And then I can either copy it to my forms with this button. I usually don't do that because it leaves the word copy on there and I forget to take it off. So I like to come over here and copy it from this button and then take it off before I save it. And so then I can take it off and create the copy. And now I have that document in my forms that I can go in and use. We will continue to add forms. Right now we have a set number that are out there that are what you need, hopefully, to get you started. But if there are forms you need, again, send in that feature request and let us know. Okay. This is just some quick directions on the two things that I did editing the beginning of the year conference and the middle of the year conference if you want to use those. And then we talked about the selection response question, which is a new question type. I think that one's going to be super helpful, especially next year, but I think it's a good question type to have for some of your non-instructionals already. And then the drop-down menu is our other new question type. And then also the evidence added to matrix questions is new as of, I think, today. All right, Shanna, are there any other things that we need to talk about?
Yeah, I want to kind of elaborate on the pre-built forms. That is something that, as Paige mentioned, that's something that we will be providing. Any forms, like I know some of you might have a question about the lift forms. We really hope to have those in there in the next. We were waiting on the drop-down question type. We really hope to have those in there within the next 2 or 3 weeks. And then also anything that we like that we know everybody will want, we'll put copies of that in there. But if there are forms that, keep in mind, it's easy to build them now. So you can do that. But look for us and we'll make announcements when we add things to the pre-built forms as well. Some other things to mention. Yeah. And thank you for showing that. The matrix, the evidence to the rows in the matrix. We do have some other updates coming soon for the matrix item types. We are going to be expanding the amount of columns that you can have. We expanded, but now we have people wanting more. So we have, there's no limitation. So we're gonna say, okay, you can add more columns. We also have something in the works to be able to show the rubric descriptors as an option. So in your form, you'll be able to say display rubric descriptors, and you can add those look fors in there if you want to, if that will help them out. So those are some updates coming. We also are, now that we have added these new item types to the forms, they will, like in the document summary, your drop down and selected response and multi-select or whatever will display in the initial, because we have like categorical, it's just the frequency, right, that'll show. But we are in the process now that we have added these item types. To the next thing is to make sure you can score those things, and we added, like right now you won't be able to see a selected response or the drop down in the detailed analysis. All of these will work in the document. So we're looking at updating some of the scoring that we're doing now that we have the item types. So that's coming soon, hopefully in the next, month or so. So, yeah, we've got a lot that we wanted to do. I will say it was huge. I know it was not an easy thing having to go through the migration. It was not easy. We had two sides of it. It was, do we build from scratch and you guys start brand new, or do we try to do the migration where you still have that other, you can still access it and everything. So hopefully the way it worked out, I know there were some bumps along the way. Hopefully everything will settle down and you will begin to really enjoy how nice the new form builder and process builder are. But we definitely appreciate your patience with that whole process. We hope to have more, and we'll continue to add some things, and we'll continue to work through that, not being able to edit, especially when we're adding things. So yeah, we're working with you. So again, I encourage you to send any feature request in, um, if there's some things that you have on your mind now that we're totally open to it. So
Thank you for that. All right. Okay, that one wasn't supposed to be there. I thought I should have moved that up one. Sorry. Final
I
question.
added that. I added that. So sorry, I put it in the wrong place. So that was
That's
me.
okay. That's okay. So when you get the slides, you will have a picture of what the evidence looks like on those matrix rows. Final questions from anybody? We've been checking the Q&A and y'all have had some really good questions in there. If you have other questions, you can always reach out to us at training@eduphoria.net because I know sometimes the minute we hang up, that's when you think of a question. So go ahead and put those in, or if it's a feature request, send that to support@eduphoria.net. I want to make sure that y'all know all the different ways that we can help you. So we've got that online help guide. You can click on the question mark from anywhere within our applications, any of them. We also provide all different kinds of training like webinars, which we're doing right now. So make sure that you're taking advantage of that, including the teacher learning site, which is right here. It's teachers@eduphoria.net, and it's a great resource to share with your teachers. It's free. They're short videos. There's a video showing them how to update their profile, which is a back to school thing that needs to happen every year. So that's a great resource that you can send them to it, or you can copy the link and send them the link. There's also videos in there about creating their goals, about doing their reflection documents, signing their documents. All of those tasks are in there for them to watch a little video and learn how to do it. So don't forget about that resource. And then also you can follow us on socials. When we do make changes, when we roll out anything, it's going to be on all of these different locations. So if you're not following us, join in and you'll get all the notifications. Um, and then you can also scan this link or go to the at Eduphoria videos to see webinars. Our upcoming webinars are always in the online help guide. If you go to that, there's going to be a button that says training and webinars, and you can click on it and see what is coming up. We do have a new TIA series that's going to be starting up this fall and a couple other things that are planned. So check that upcoming webinars to see what's going on. All right, we appreciate your time. Finished on the dot. And so we hope to see you at our next webinar or any other event that we have going on. Thanks a lot.
Woohoo. Thank you.